Hello. One of the very few mainstream figures who has consistently spoken out against the government's COVID policy is the former Supreme Court Judge Lord Jonathan Sumption. In this article in the Financial Times, he states the sheer scale on which government has sought to govern by decree, creating new criminal offences sometimes several times a week on the mere say-so of ministers, is in constitutional terms truly breathtaking. And he later goes on to state in this article, he states that the implication was that in a crisis the police were entitled to do whatever they thought fit without being unduly concerned about their legal powers. That is my definition of a police state. He warned about this move to an authoritarian model of politics that would outlast the current crisis. The government has discovered the power of public fear to let it get its way. It will not forget, he said. And this is a major issue which goes way beyond the issue of COVID. It's this issue of being governed by decree. And what he's referring to is the way that, for instance, at the very start of the first lockdown, we had Boris Johnson announcing on the television that you must stay home and announcing that you can leave the house to exercise just once a day for 1 hour a day. And this was before any legislation had been put in place through Parliament, before there'd be any debate, any vote. Boris Johnson makes that announcement, and the police were on hand to enforce that when no such legislation had been voted on or gone through any kind of parliamentary protocol. And the bit about 1 hour a day was never in the legislation, in the Coronavirus Act legislation at all. So that was merely the wishes of a minister, but the police were out there arresting people, fining people, because on occasions they were seen having more than one walk during a day. And this is what he means by government by decree. And we've seen this continually with new mandates about face masks, simply not having had any proper parliamentary debate, not having the usual impact assessment, the usual checks and balances, but they've just been announced, usually by someone like Matt Hancock, and put into legislation at about 11:30 or the night before they were due to come into place. This is government by decree, and this has got to stop. Now, I cannot predict exactly what's going to happen to the whole COVID regime. I know that the house of cards has already fallen down, and it's just a matter of getting a critical mass of the public to see it, and for the wheels to really come off in such a way that the government can no longer sustain this notion that there's a deadly virus. And I can see right now that they are struggling. The very fact they're talking about new strains, new mutations of viruses, when the first one was never properly identified. And we can see they're getting desperate right now. But I want to present to you a possible scenario. Now, in one sense, this would be a good thing if, supposing that the wheels were coming off and the government thought, and other governments around the world as well, because it's a global thing, thought, well, we've got to kind of put an end to this one, because otherwise there's going to be a backlash against us. So one day they decide, they come and announce COVID is over, and we can be free again, we can do all the things we used to enjoy, we can end all those restrictions, and everyone has a big party. And that would be a wonderful day. It would be a wonderful day for me as well. But here's the thing. Even if that was to happen, this would not get rid of government by decree, as Lord Sumption talks about. Because history shows when governments perform a power grab against their own people, they rarely give those powers back to the people. They'll grab power when there's an emergency, or when they claim there's an emergency, but they don't rescind that power when that emergency is over. And the thing about this COVID is there never was a public health crisis in the first place. So how can we ever trust them to give that power back? But supposedly they decide that we've got to end this one and we can't go on like this, and we've got to make the public think that boost them morale a little bit for a little while, give them some respite. What we must do is we must make sure this never ever happens again, and we must put an end to this government by decree. That is what we need to do. We need to make sure this government by decree does not continue, and we need to strengthen our constitutional safeguards. We already have a constitution, but we need it to be upheld, and we need to strengthen the checks and balances and limit the powers and the jurisdiction of government. So this can never happen again. Not only no more lockdowns, but no more government decree. And we need to make sure that the government is not allowed just to simply declare there's an emergency and then put you in lockdown, close your business, cancel your wedding, and all that sort of thing on a whim with no evidence. That must never, ever, ever be allowed to happen. And we must say never again once this is over. Well, actually, I say never again now, but however the future pans out, that is what's got to happen. Never again, no more lockdowns, no more government by decree. We must not forget what Lord Sumption has said, and we all must demand an end to it. Thank you.